You know how most people have that little filter inside their head that stops them from saying things that they shouldn't? Well, these people do not have that filter. Number 10. Megan Fox. Megan has been featured in several films over the years, but it was an interview about her time working with Michael Bay on the set of the Transformers movies that canceled her career for good. The original live-action Transformers movie came out in 2007 and co-starred Megan and Shia LaBeouf in the leading roles. It was a fun movie on screen, but behind the scenes there was a ton of tension on set. According to Megan, who had previously worked with Michael on Bad Boys 2, working for Michael was like working for Schmittler. Fun fact, if you add sh to someone's name, you can say it online. Loophole. Of course, Michael didn't appreciate being compared to, you know, one of the worst men in human history, so many speculated that her being left out of third Transformers movie may have had something to do with behind-the-scenes drama. She went on to call him bland and claimed that he had no personality or social skills of any kind. Like, hey Megan, that's just a little bit harsh. It's a little personal. When the comments were made public, her career began to slowly suffer. Not only was she written out of the Transformers series, but she was forced to make a public apology and actually retract her statements following the massive slew of backlash from fans. She took a few years off, but Michael himself later acknowledged the misstep on Megan's part and not only accepted the retraction, but the pair were able to patch things up and work together on the live-action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies from 2014. Yay! Number 9. Cara Delevingne. Cara is a gifted actor and overall seems like a solid human being. So much like the rest of us, she gets tired and annoyed from time to time. Unfortunately, that feeling took place on live TV while promoting her new movie, Paper Towns. While making an appearance on the early morning show, Good Day Sacramento, the interview did not get off to a great start. The program's anchor called her Carla, and she then spent the next few minutes trying to get info out of Cara, but was failing miserably. Falling deep into the anchor role, she pulled out the old, hey, wow, that's amazing. Hey listen Carla, did you read the book that this thing's based on, or did you even have time to read because you're so busy? She was having none of that. She was very sarcastic with each answer to the fairly generic questions. Do you relate to the character? What was your favorite moment? Blah blah blah. It was then that a third anchor abruptly popped in and asked Cara if she was exhausted, as she seemed a bit more excited to speak about the project a few weeks prior in London. She giggled and said, no, I'm fine. Apparently the premiere of the film was the night before, which she claimed to feel like the end of an era. But the anchors do not know when to quit. In fact, one of the anchors then suggested that she may be irritated, or maybe it was just them. They then cut the interview short and told her to take a nap and get a Red Bull. She can be heard saying, oh my god, too far, before the news anchor screeches over her and shuts her down. According to Cara, there was really no bad blood. She was just sick of answering the same questions over and over again. Following the interview, the man who popped up and gave his 2 cents was fired for causing such a tense situation on live TV. Number 8. Mike Tyson. Now, I had trouble landing on just one interview to mention when it comes to Mike. He's someone who seems to bounce back even after the most heinous of controversies, so we're just gonna run down through a few good ones. The first time Mike really hurt his career was in the late 80s, and it wasn't even something that he said. He was doing an interview with his then girlfriend Robin Gibbs when the topic of Mike's behavior came up. She said herself that Mike had an extremely volatile temper, and recently reports had surfaced of Mike getting loud and physical with her. Something she seemingly confirmed while Mike was just staring the interviewer down the entire time. Very intense. That was the first little notch on his belt, but as the years went by, more and more controversy came to light. During a press tour for his latest bout in the early 2000s, he lashed out at a fan in the crowd, hurling a slew of insults at him and calling them the British word for cancer sticks. It starts with an F and it rhymes with maggot. The clip became viral overnight and placed his career even further into jeopardy than it already was. But he finally drove the nail into the coffin on CP24 breakfast television in 2014. After somehow maintaining enough relevance to get a one-man show, Mike was sitting down with host Nathan Downer to promote when the interview took a hard left and went from, so what's the show about, to, so should you even be allowed on stage, you monster? That's not what he actually said, but that's what Mike heard. He stopped answering the questions honestly, and he would instead hurl insults sarcastically. The F word is once again his favorite. I don't know if you've noticed, but Mike hasn't been on the news much since that day, and for very good reasons. Number 7. Rachel Zegler. Rachel Zegler's comments about the upcoming live-action Snow White remake could have a huge impact on ticket sales, according to branding experts. The 22-year-old actress has received plenty of backlash after she admitted that she hated the original 1937 movie and branded the storyline weird, while referring to the Prince character as just a straight-up stalker. The backlash occurred after several videos of Rachel speaking negatively about the original film in various interviews last year resurfaced online, where she talked about her version of the character. She said she's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. While Disney may just be trying to modernize the classic, the comments were causing her to be labeled a fake feminist, with some critics accusing Rachel of gaslighting, and one marketing consultant has warned that Disney will need to be careful on how they have portrayed Snow White. Snow White has already been suffering from backlash well before Rachel made her comments. Peter Dinklage spoke out about Disney not using dwarf actors for the new film, instead opting to use heavy CGI on Hollywood elites. Rachel's role as Snow White is currently up in the air, because while the film is set to be released in March of next year, the writer's strike may be the exact situation that the studio needs to recast and rewrite its oldest character. Number 6. Liam Neeson. Liam may have spent a long time as a dramatic action star, but his most dramatic moment yet came during an interview published by The Independent. He was promoting his new film Cold Pursuit, which follows his character seeking retribution after his son is slain. When he was asked how his character turns to anger, he replied by telling them something primal kicks in when someone close to you is a victim of violence. He then shared a true story about a close friend of his admitting to a physical altercation with another man a few years prior. When he heard the news, he said something took over him. When he asked her if she knew what his name was, she said no, but she knew what color his skin was. After using some very offensive language to describe this man, Liam then admitted to spending the next week carrying around a small baton and praying that, quote, a random black man would cross his path. The article began circulating fast, and Liam received a tidal wave of backlash. Since 2019, he has starred in a few films, but nothing as high budget or universally liked as his previous roles.
At number 10, we have Thinking Kate Hudson Won an Oscar. In the world of Hollywood, winning an Oscar is one of the biggest career-changing moments. So when ABC reporter George Penicino said, "Kate, you know what it's like to win an Oscar?" to which she was uncomfortable and replied, I've never won an Oscar. For some background information, Kate Hudson starred in movies like Glass Onion, Mother's Day with Jennifer Aniston, as well as How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. So I can understand why he thought she would have won. But when you're an interviewer, it's important to have a base of knowledge on the people who are going to be there, so as to not embarrass yourself. And this was no exception. Thankfully for George, he wasn't fired because of his little live television slip-up, but it's safe to say that he has learned his lesson about making assumptions.
Number 9. Zac Efron's Love Tubes. Zac rose to fame as a Disney darling, playing the leading role of Troy Bolton in the popular High School Musical series. Since his Disney days, Zac has lent his face and voice to several projects over the years, but the red carpet event that we're talking about today was for the animated Dr. Seuss movie, The Lorax. Zac, who voiced the main character of the film, was walking the red carpet when he suddenly handed his assistant something in his pocket. As he handed them the product, something fell out of his pocket and onto the ground. That something is a word that I can't say online, so let's just call them love tubes. Zac's love tube wrapper was flat on the carpet right there for the world to see. He quickly picked it up, but the damage was already done. In the first interview following this incident, the interviewer asked Zac if anything unplanned had happened to him recently, and he then explained that it was a complete accident, that there was no pre-show pocket check, anything that could have prevented it. Well, Illumination didn't like that excuse, and they also didn't like their main star being associated with such an adult product. So when the plans for a Lorax sequel were brought to the studios, Zac's name was left out and replaced by another star. I guess whoever they picked wasn't famous enough because the project was ultimately shelved by the studio, and Zac was able to find work somewhere else. In Baywatch.
At number 8, we have Jim Carrey's existential rant. Jim Carrey is a character who has had many varying roles. From the Grinch in the iconic live-action version of How the Grinch Stole Christmas, he was in The Cable Guy with Matthew Broderick, and he most recently played Dr. Eggman in the live-action Sonic the Hedgehog movies. His IMDb spans on and on, but something important to know about him is that he had really bad depression, and really let himself go over the years. One of those moments we really saw how the mind of a genius works was when he was on a rant during an interview at the 2017 Harper's Bazaar Icons party. No one really knew why he showed up in the first place if he was so unhappy to be there, but former E! reporter Kat Sadler came up to him to ask him questions. He leaned into the mic and he said, "There is no meaning to any of this." When she asked why he was attending the party, he said that he wanted to find the most meaningless thing he could come to and join, and there he was. Sadler tried to pry about other things and what the term icon meant to him, but he continued to spew existential nonsense that made everyone uncomfortable aside from him. It may not have been gross, but his career did begin to decline, both before and after this.
If there is one thing that should be known about Taylor Swift, is that she can end entire careers with one conversation. In 2015, Taylor was on the red carpet for the Grammy Awards when she was interviewed by Entertainment Tonight. The woman who interviewed her started the interview by asking her cameraman to pan up and down, literally checking Taylor out with this massive camera. It's not weird at all. After going along with the bit for a moment and telling the camera about her dress, the interviewer said that she honestly just wanted a shot of Taylor's legs because, as she said before, Taylor is going to be going home with more than a trophy. Maybe a man. Well, Taylor didn't appreciate that comment or the assumption. She did not laugh and then proceeded to tell the interviewer that she would be going home with no men, just hanging out with friends, maybe some of her cats. While the majority of the interview went well, the interviewers were reprimanded behind the scenes by Taylor herself. The news of Taylor's dislike for the interviewers made its way up to the top, where the ET executives decided to keep them off of the red carpet for a while. Remember, keep your creepy camera gestures to yourself, lady.
At number 6, we have David Letterman with Jennifer Aniston. David Letterman used to be the host of The Tonight Show before Jimmy Fallon took over. He's also a comedian who was successful for many years, and some comedians can take a sketch too far, or commit to a bit that makes people uncomfortable. And that's exactly what happened to a young Jennifer Aniston while on the show with him. They were making conversation, as one does, but then he got up and tried to eat her hair. I understand that you can really like someone as an actor, but when you are actively trying to eat their hair on live television, that is just too far. However, like the true professional she is, she let him. And there are photos out there of David Letterman leaning over Miss Aniston with her hair in his mouth.
In 2007, the former Grey's Anatomy star not only won an Emmy for Best Supporting Actress in a Dramatic Series, but she also began transitioning into the big screen with the success of her first feature comedy, Knocked Up, alongside comedy legend Seth Rogen. Unfortunately, her rise to the top quickly became a free fall into a volcano following an ill-fated Vanity Fair interview the following January. In the interview, Catherine made a move that still has people scratching their heads to this day. She openly bashed the film that made her famous, claiming that it painted women as true, humorless, and uptight, while also placing blame on Seth for writing the men as lovable, goofy, fun guys. The film still sits at an impressive 89% on Rotten Tomatoes because while she may claim that the project was problematic, the final product was a fun love story filled with some pretty solid jokes, and performances, and a great story. Seth felt betrayed by the comments as they never had a fight on set, and it never seemed like she was uncomfortable at any point. These comments, combined with some negativity towards her Grey's Anatomy writers, caused her agents to drop her as a client, and her time in Hollywood slowly came to a halt. These days she stars in the CBS comedy Our House, but it's looking like she may never return to the big screen. Number 4. Brie Larson. Brie was announced as the newest member of the Marvel Universe in 2019, starring in the film Captain Marvel as the titular superhero. At first, people were pretty excited to see what Marvel would do with this property. Captain Marvel is, after all, one of the original cosmic heroes in comic book canon, and I know I'm a nerd, leave me alone. However, when the movie was actually released, fans were pretty upset with Brie's performance. According to them, she was stale and seemed bored from start to finish. When asked about the online hate at the D23 red carpet in 2022, Brie said she's not sure if she's going to continue to play the character beyond her upcoming Captain Marvel sequel, The Marvels. She's aware of all the hate surrounding her character and defends that role by telling people that's how she was told to play the role. But it's also Brie Larson. She's always been stiff, but that's kind of part of why it's funny. Go watch Scott Pilgrim, you ninnies! Overall, she doesn't sound as terrible as some of the other entries on this list, but the way she has responded to interviewers in the past has pegged her as a Miss Marvel meanie. Number 3. Paula Abdul. In 2012, famous judge and British bad boy Simon Cowell decided to fire his fellow X Factor judge after she went on Fox News and made herself sound just a little bit like a fool. During an interview with Q13, things start out a little rocky thanks to some audio issues causing Paula to hear a station in Texas instead of the one that she was trying to talk to. When they eventually got everything up and running, Paula was just as confusing as she was with the original audio issue. The interviewers were trying to ask her about her visit to Seattle, where Simon claimed that the worst singers he has ever encountered dwell. But instead of defending the city, Paula doubled down and agreed with Simon. But it's not the statement though that landed her in the hot seat, it was the way she was speaking. Paula had always been a little bit animated in her life, using her arms a lot when speaking to people, but she was particularly slurry and she seemed like she was under the influence of something. This was just one of several interviews where Paula was noticeably woozy. Simon's actually claimed that the only reason she was invited to host on the X Factor in the first place was to see that if she would bring in the American Idol viewers. When that didn't pan out, he realized that the right move to make was just to let her go and move on to greener pastures. Of course, Paula was mad about this and confronted Simon several times, only digging herself further and further into that hole. Number 2. Tom Cruise. Matt Lauer is not just a terrible man who turned out to be a creepy creepo. He was once a popular talk show host in the early 2000s. During an interview with Tom Cruise in 2005, the topic of his scientific beliefs came up that quickly sent Tom into a rant about psychiatry. Somehow the topic got into Ritalin and pseudosciences. I don't know. Tom yelled at Matt about knowing more than him about psychiatry. Like he had some inside information that he was secretly a therapist or something. The interview came at the height of Tom's very public descent into chaotic badness, becoming very famous for his outlandish beliefs and his wish to push them onto other people. The highlight of the interview came when Cruise was asked about his previous criticism of Brooke Shields taking anti-sad time pills, to which he responded by calling her a glib. And I looked up the definition. That means fluent and voluble, but insecure and shallow. This was only one of several interviews from 2005 that we could discuss today. When he was with Katie Holmes, he was a bit of a nutcase. Just ask Oprah Winfrey. Ever since the mid-2000s, Tom's career has been mainly in the Mission Impossible movies, with only a few small roles to fill the gaps here and there. Not the Hollywood superstar that he was aiming to be. And at number 1, Lance Armstrong. 7-time Tour de France winner Lance Armstrong has gone down in history as a man who was unable to ride a bike without his chemical training wheels. In an interview with Oprah Winfrey in 2013, Lance was brought on to discuss the allegations floating around regarding his status as a Tour de France winner. Several sources claimed that Lance had taken performance-enhancing substances to win each of his races, as well as a type of transfusion involving the red life juice that flows inside all of us. Armstrong went on air and fessed up to every single thing that they were claiming he had done. However, he did deny the notion that he was some kind of a mastermind who would control his teammates and force them to join in his extracurricular activities. But amidst his admission of guilt, say that 10 times fast, there was a moment where he tried to pin the situation on his battle with cancer. He wraps it up by saying that he should have tried harder to cancel the culture rather than create more of a problem. He was stripped of all 7 Tour de France titles, and he has since lived in exile among the cycling world.
Number 5. Scarlett Johansson. When Scarlett Johansson sat down with her co-star Jeremy Renner for an interview with Extra in 2012, out of nowhere the reporter went on to ask the actress if she wore underwear underneath her Black Widow costume. Scarlett then responded to him by saying, "You're like the 5th person that asked me that today." The actress then went on to continue to say, What is going on? Since when do people start asking each other in interviews about their underwear? The interviewer then went on to justify his question by trying to explain that he only asked the question because she was wearing a costume that was skin tight. Having enough of the question, Scarlett cut him off and said, "I'll leave it up to your imagination, whatever you feel like I should be wearing or not wearing under the costume." But honestly, why are men like this sometimes? Number 4, Anne Hathaway. While Anne Hathaway was speaking to Extra with reporter Jerry Penacoli about her role as Catwoman in the 2012 film The Dark Knight Rises, Anne had to unfortunately keep her cool as she tried to navigate through a series of questions about her body. After Jerry decided to talk about Anne's feline fitness routine by noting that Anne had to be in perfect shape for the film, Anne would then respond to Jerry by saying it wasn't about being in perfect shape, it was about being able to do the stunts and fighting perfectly. When Jerry went on to ask Anne about the form-fitting costume she wore, she would then patiently tell him that the suit didn't feel like sweatpants, and then shifted her attention to her male co-star Christian Bale, saying he had it worse since his costume covered his ears. Question about her body then continued, and Jerry asked her about her diet and exercise routine leading up to the film, which Anne responded by saying boring before clapping back at Jerry saying, "Are you trying to lose weight? What's the deal, man? You look great." Number 3, Nicki Minaj. Nicki Minaj has no time for your rudeness, and she clearly has strong opinions. While Nicki did an interview with New York Times magazine, when the reporter asked the rapper if she enjoyed the drama of all the feuds surrounding her life before naming the drama between Meek Mills and Drake among others, she definitely didn't get the answer she was looking for after Nicki said, "Why would a grown woman thrive off drama? What do the 4 men you just named have to do with me thriving off drama?" Nicki then went on to tell the reporter who was asking her ill-advised questions that she was disrespectful and she didn't care to speak to her anymore, which was a pretty iconic statement on how women in the industry should be shutting down rude questions like a total boss. Number 2, Dakota Johnson. So back in 2019, Dakota Johnson appeared on Ellen DeGeneres' show, but little did she know that she would go down in history after the standard interview swiftly took a chaotic turn when Ellen decided she would throw some shade at Dakota because she didn't invite Ellen to her birthday party, which happened 2 months prior to the interview. When Ellen went on to say, "You turned 30, how was the party? I wasn't invited," to which Dakota quickly responded by saying, "Actually no, that's not the truth, Ellen." She then went on to say, "Last time I was on the show last year, you gave me a bunch of hell about not inviting you, but I didn't even know you wanted to be invited. I didn't even know you liked me." Visibly startled, Ellen then replied by saying, "Of course I like you. You knew I like you. You've been on the show many times. Don't I like the show? Like?" Dakota then swiftly doubled down on her stance by adding, "I did invite you and you didn't come. Ask everybody," before turning to Ellen's producers for backup, and they confirmed that the host was indeed invited to the party and she just chose not to come. And coming in at number 1 today, we have Fifth Harmony. So when Fifth Harmony announced Camila Cabello's exit from the group, it didn't stop journalists from all over the world trying to create drama when it came to the reason to why Camila left. When the Sun associate director Dan Wootton had an interview with the group, he continued to ask questions after questions about Camila. He then went on to try to get shady responses out of them. Dan would then go on to say, "Camila seemed to say that she was upfront and honest about why she wanted to leave, but you guys said those conversations hadn't taken place." There was then this really awkward pause before one of them replied, "Right now, we're really focused on each other. We're so excited in the now, and we have so much to look forward to." The publicist then jumped into the conversation to get Dan to talk about the band's new music, and then you could hear all the girls kind of mumble in the background when they said things like, "What is this?" and "so shady."
Number 10, Mike Tyson. So I had trouble landing on just one interview to mention when it comes to this man. He is someone who seems to just bounce back after every single heinous thing he's done. So we're gonna run through a few of them. The first time Mike really hurt his career was in the 80s, and it wasn't even something he said. He was doing an interview with his then girlfriend Robin Gibbs. When the topic of Mike's behavior came up, she said herself that Mike had an extremely volatile temper. Recent reports had also surfaced of Mike getting loud and physical with Robin, something she seemingly confirmed, while Mike just stared at the interviewer the entire time, giving him an evil look. Now that was one of the first little notches on his belt. That wasn't really a meltdown. As the years years went by, more and more controversies came to light, and during a press tour for his latest bout in the early 2000s, he lashed out at a fan in the crowd, hurling a slew of insults and calling them the British word for cancer sticks. It starts with an F and it rhymes with maggot. The clip became viral overnight and placed his career in jeopardy, but he finally drove that nail into the coffin on CP24's Breakfast Television in 2014. After somehow maintaining enough relevance to get a one-man show, Mike was sitting down with host Nathan Downer to promote when the interview took a hard left and went from "so what's the show about" to "so should you even be allowed on stage, you monster?" That's not what he actually said, but apparently that's what Mike Tyson heard, because he stopped answering questions and would instead hurl sarcastic insults. The F word is once again his favorite and just throws it at him. I don't know if you've noticed, but Mike hasn't been on the news much since then, and probably for a good reason. Number 9. Paula Abdul. Q13 Fox News. In 2012, famous judge and British bad boy Simon Cowell decided to fire his fellow X Factor judge after she went on Fox News and made herself sound like a little bit of a fool. During an interview with Q13, things started out a little rocky thanks to some audio issues causing Paula to hear a station in Texas instead of their own. When they eventually got everything up and running, Paula was just as confusing as she was with the original issues. The interviewers were trying to ask her about her visit to Seattle, where Simon claims that the worst singers that he has ever encountered dwell. Instead of defending the city, Paula doubled down and agreed with Simon. It's not the statement though that landed her in the hot seat, it was actually just the way that she was speaking. Paula had always been a little bit animated in her life, using arms a lot when speaking to people, but she was particularly slurry and seemed like she was under the influence of something. This was just one of several interviews where Paula is noticeably woozy. Simon Cowell has actually claimed the only reason she was invited to host on the X Factor in the first place was to see if she would bring in the American Idol viewers, and when that didn't pan out, he realized the right move to make was to let her go because she's not great on television. Of course, Paula was mad about this and confronted Simon several times, only making that meltdown bigger and bigger. Number 8. Robert Downey Jr. Being a part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe means a ton of interviews. Now, Robert had the fortune of playing Iron Man for 10 years, being featured in 11 movies. While doing press for his second round with the Avengers in 2015, he had the misfortune of speaking with a legendarily terrible interviewer, Krishnan Guru Murphy, on Channel 4. Now, I've talked about this guy in other videos for making Quentin Tarantino walk out of an interview, and he is making a return for something pretty similar. The interview is uncomfortable from the very beginning. Krishnan stumbles through his questions as quickly as he can, with Robert doing his best just to keep things smooth. Instead of asking questions about the movie though, Krishnan decided to probe Robert about his life in prison and with substance control issues. Now, at first, he's okay and answers the questions, but then Krishnan brings up his dad and asks if he feels that he escaped his dark past. Robert is visibly anxious and begins breathing pretty heavy to keep himself calm. He asks what they were doing there, and then the team said goodbye. He stood up and walked out of the room, and he said that Krishnan seemed nice, but things were getting just a little bit too Diane Sawyer for his taste. This was one of the most uncomfortable interview moments in Robert's career, and it's not even close to the worst one for Krishnan. Number 7. Sofia Vergara. Fans of the show Modern Family will recognize Sofia as Gloria, aka Manny's mom, who is just absolutely hilarious and heartwarming at the same time, even outside of Modern Family. Now, while speaking with Ellen in 2017 about her career and some new projects coming up, Ellen decided to play a game called English Word of the Day. Claiming to be learning Spanish with one word a day, she wished to teach Sofia one as well. Before the segment, Sofia is roasting Ellen for her dislike of cotton, but when Ellen asks if she wants to learn the English word with her, Sofia scoffs and is visibly annoyed, claiming that she speaks English very well. Ellen gives her the word flabbergasted and asks her to define what it means. Not only does she pronounce it correctly the first time, but she knew exactly what it meant. Ellen follows it up with discombobulated, which left Sofia confused and thinking pretty hard. Now, she butchered the word, and while she seemed to be taking things in stride, it turns out Sofia was so frustrated with participating in this game, as she is a bit self-conscious when it comes to her accent. A lot of people consider the segment to be a little bit racist and more cringe-inducing than fun. I've seen the clip. That's accurate. Number 6, Joaquin Phoenix. We understand a dedication to your craft, and Joaquin Phoenix is just a prime example. This dude's acting career has been going steady since he first appeared in the 1989 comedy Parenthood when he was in his teens. Now, while he is seen as one of the greatest actors in recent history, his reputation on set was a little tarnished thanks to a freak out while filming the 2018 solo flick Joker. He appeared on Jimmy Kimmel Live to promote the shoot when Jimmy plays a behind-the-scenes clip of Joaquin getting loud and angry at a man named Larry, and the constant whispering behind the cameras before dropping a few F-bombs and storming off this set. When the cameras came back to the studio, Joaquin was frozen in shock and clearly not expecting that clip to ever see the light of day. He is not having a good time. He explained that Larry was a cinematographer who teased Joaquin off set earlier in the day, calling him a diva and referring to him as Cher. In fact, if you're watching the clip and during the outbursts, you can actually hear him say, "You want to call me Cher? How is that an insult?" He then explained that there is a lot of pressure on set, especially in a closed space, like the apartment from the scene that they were filming. He apologized to the audience for having to see him behave like that, which, was met with applause. Because at the end of the day, he's a performer and no harm came from the outburst or the meltdown, and honestly, if Larry's cool with it, so are we. Number 5, John Mayer. John may be known for spending time with the ladies, but it's not all peaches and cream. The musician was doing an interview with Playboy magazine in 2010. Now I know it involves Playboy, who are notoriously provocative, but even they thought this interview was just a bit much. John gets into some pretty graphic depictions of things that he wanted to do to Jessica Simpson, using language that cannot be repeated online. But he then ventures off the physical intimacy thing and instead begins to speak about his, and I quote, hood pass, claiming that he had become so popular among black people that he could get away with anything he wanted, and he then called it the N-word pass. Yeah, not a great moment for this guy. Following the interview, fans were beyond upset at his behavior and his attitude towards women and honestly just people in general. Many turned on John, making a massive dent in his career, rightfully so, and nowadays this is one of the only things that he is remembered for. Well, that and his really bad cameo in Get Hard.
At number 4, we have Jay Leno questioning Kanye West. Jay Leno was the host of yet another late night show, and back in 2009, he had Kanye West on his show. You see, the event that caused this was Kanye West interrupting young Taylor Swift's mid-acceptance speech for the best music video, I might add, to say that Beyonce had the best music video and should have won, in front of an audience on TV. For some context, Kanye's mother had passed away in 2007, just a couple years prior to the incident. Jay Leno knew this, and he said that he was fortunate enough to have met his mother. So, Leno, in a very disrespectful fashion, asked Kanye if his mother would have been disappointed in him for doing that, and asked if she would have lectured him. You can see how shocked he is and how hurt he is hearing those words. He almost had no response. Whether or not you're a fan of him, that was still so unprofessional and cruel.
Number 3, Amy Schumer. In the mid-2010s, comedian Amy Schumer was named one of Time magazine's top 100 most influential people and was made to attend a red carpet event to celebrate with her fellow influencers. 2 of them were Kanye West and Kim Kardashian. While discussing the incident on the Graham Norton show, Amy revealed that there was a planned prank on Kim and Ye. Her goal was to get them to crack a smile and get some good fun pics from this event, but Kim and Kanye did not find this situation funny and continued to walk past her as she fell in front of them in a dramatic fashion. The best picture is just Kim staring at Amy for a moment being like, okay, and then just moving on. While the moment was meant to create a fun scene, it instead made Amy look like she had some kind of grudge against Kim and Kanye. While not an interview, the incident on the red carpet forced Comedy Central to postpone a season of her show until things were sorted out with Kim. Well, it turned out that not only did Kim not care about this, but she did end up finding the entire thing funny, with the two apparently now being close.